So I believe to really meet the aspirations of quality of life of people as they move to the cities, the ability to give them governance which is transparent, accessible, accountable is extremely important. That gets them to buy into, what a city means for them. Hi, I am Viraj Tyagi. I am CEO at eGov Foundation, and you're listening to Understanding the Future podcast.
Hello everyone, I am Puneet Gandhi, Senior Associate with the Climate Center for Cities at the National Institute of Urban Affairs, and welcome to the Season 3 of Understanding the Future podcast. I have been working and studying in the field of sustainability and climate change for more than 8 years, and I have realized that I have a lot of questions on how we can build cities in India that are more climate focused. With Understanding the Future podcast, I interact with experts, entrepreneurs, and government officials to understand what it takes to bring all the different solutions to the ground, as well as how can systemic changes be developed on ground. We will further anchor all the topics being discussed with different skill sets required. This will help us understand the future of cities and future of work in Indian context. If you are tuning in for the first time, do check out our previous episodes. Also, don't forget to check out the Climate Practitioners India Network, a members-led solutions-oriented platform for climate practitioners across India, and join it through the show notes. Hope you enjoy the podcast. Hello, and welcome to the Season 3 of Understanding the Future. I am your host Puneet Gandhi, Senior Associate with the Climate Center for Cities. Today we have with us Mr. Viraj Tyagi. He is the CEO of eGov Foundation, and today he will help us understand the topic of digitizing municipal services. Welcome to the show, Viraj.
Thank you. Great to be here.
We are glad that you could come to our show, and I think the first question I would like to start off is, why is digitization so important, especially with such a big system which is so diverse? How are we even thinking about something like this?
No, I think when you look at cities as a whole, Puneet, cities are truly the engines of India's growth. I think 70% plus of GDP comes from the cities. Every minute, every 2 minutes, a person moves into the cities. And the rate of growth, I live in Bangalore, and I've seen it change over the last 30 years, from a sleepy town to a bustling metro with all the opportunities which are there. So cities truly are an engine of India's growth and aspirations in a lot of ways. And I guess when such a big mass of humanity is moving into these cities, the availability of basic services, amenities, and ability to kind of connect with the local governance is very important. Otherwise, if you're not able to govern it well, then you'll have frustrations building up. You'll have, people will not be happy with how things are being dealt with. So I believe to really meet the aspirations of quality of life of people as they move to the cities, the ability to give them governance which is transparent, accessible, accountable is extremely important. That gets them to buy into, what a city means for them. So that is a meta of a point from a governance and service delivery point of view, that it should be easy for me to pay my taxes. It should be easy for me to get my street cleaned up. It should be easy for me to get a new water connection. It should be easy for, if I'm a trader, it should be frictionless. And I think, so for that to happen at scale, and like you said, with the complexity which India has, right? If you rely on the traditional ways of, let's build a software for, for Saranpur and build a software for Asansol and build a software for Jaipur, it is very hard, right? And we have seen that if you use digital technologies to deliver service at scale, what happens? Flipkart can deliver now in Mufsil towns, right? When people did not even have a trust buying stuff from dealers face to face. To me, what digitization does is it gives a trusted kind of a interaction mechanism between government and the citizens to deliver and consume services. It takes a lot of the friction out of the day-to-day. People are saying, who will go to the government office? I have to stand in the queue. It'll take 5 hours to get a simple form. I have to go 3 times. And this is the kind of change you want to bring And now people are used to it, given what they have seen from the banks and from the e-commerce, that this is possible, that you can, in a digitized economy, deliver frictionless services in no matter which channel it is, whether you go to the counter or you do it on your phone, but the same service is available to you in a high trust environment, that you know that your issue is being addressed, and you know what you need to take there, you know it will be done in so many days, and if it is not done, you get some kind of information that it is not being done for some reason. So that is why I feel to really provide an environment in a city where people feel included and listened to and get the services they need, digitization is very important. Digital services is very important.
No, I absolutely agree, and I like the point that you raised that it's important to even acknowledge that if it is not happening, why it is not happening, because I think that is where the transparency kind of lies, that at least the other person can also understand what is the hassle, why is it taking long or short or whatever the problem may be. So let's also help us understand what kind of services are we talking about when we're talking about municipal services? What all things are we trying to encompass in the digitization gambit?
Yeah, I think also, just before I finish that point, just one point. Sure. Also, from a city manager's point of view, people who run cities, whether you are a municipal commissioner or you are a ACS or whatever, I think having a unified view of what is happening in my city is very important. And half the time, the struggle is you don't know which are the black spots in my. You realize when the newspaper comes to you, oh, this is what is happening. Or how much revenue you have collected, which wards are doing better, which are doing worse, which departments are delivering better services, right? And that is usually the lack of data and lack of what I call custody of chain of custody leads to a lot of mistrust on data in the system. Okay. That a department reports, how many cases did you resolve? It's an Excel sheet people fill up and send. When you use Ola or Uber, driver is not telling you it's coming in 4 minutes. It is the digitized system which is telling you it will take 4 minutes. It is a digitized system which sends you the alert that now rate this thing. If you have a system where data flows automatically as interactions are happening, the city managers have a very good view of, okay, I realize now this is a low-lying area, there's always a mosquito menace here. Can I do something systematically to fix it rather than waiting for the next dengue outbreak? So I think that's the supply side of the equation. The first part I said was the demand side of it. Now coming to what you're saying, what municipal services we're talking about. So we bouquet of services. So the 4 categories mainly. One is applying for things, whether you're applying for a new building permit, whether you're applying for a trade license, whether you're applying for a hawker license, whether you're applying for a new water connection. So there are those services, there 1250 of those services. Then there are payments that you need to make as taxes, property tax, your water service charges, you have to pay some kind of alteration charges when you change your property, all the payments kind of come into that category. Third is information. I think information, like you said, information is very critical. People need to know what is where, right? So knowing where is my nearest vaccination center, where is my nearest public health PHC, who's my contact point for, sanitation issues in my area, right? So having this information is very important, right? And the fourth is resolution, which is saying, if I have a problem, how do I get resolved? Where can I complain? Where can I have a redressal to my grievances? So I think there are from, about 35 services that are there, which are which kind of fall into the ambit of municipal services.
Okay. And so when we're talking about this, around how many cities are we talking about who have gone towards digitization or are in the process of going towards the same?
I mean, currently, when we look at the work we have been doing and now the work we're doing with NIUA, I think almost, I would say, 1,000 cities are digitized, in some manner, and another couple of thousands are on the way to this path. And India has about 4,400 cities and towns. And when you say cities, it's not cities like Bombay, but there are small municipal towns that 10,000, 20,000 population there, Nagar Parishads, Nagar Panchayat, and all those things. I mean, and that's the other power that internet scale digitalization has, that the equity of access, it is not just the Bombays and Bangalore's of the world which can have the same service, but even the smaller towns like Saranpur, or Saranpur is not a small town, so, or let's say Longowal in Punjab, have the same service because you're using digital platforms.
Okay, no, that's true, and I think internet has been quite a forefront in helping us develop such kind of mechanisms as well to make sure that it can be adopted at the mass state. But so coming to this point of technology, how is it possible to manage this whole technology? Because now each city is different. How does then each city make sure? Is it a same copy-paste approach, or is it something that gets translated for each city in a different way? How does that function, the technology part?
No, that's a constant challenge. That how do you account for local diversity? How do you account for specific things which are applicable to a particular context? Right? So I think there are two ways you can address it. There's a traditional way of addressing it, which is saying for every city you build a different solution, which is again from the point of view of scaling and maintaining. It's very hard. Some of the states we go to, they give us that there are 27 different logins the employees have to deliver different stuff because they came at different points in time, at different cities have different systems and all those things. So other approaches, you say there are common building blocks of doing these services, which is what we typically call a platform way of solving, that you actually create a common set of building blocks. So let's say payment. Now, whether you're paying for your electricity bill, water bill, or your property, a payment is basically a transaction of saying, there's a demand on me of this much, I am paying this much, this is the instrument I'm using. And the receiver says, oh yeah, I see this was your demand, okay, this is what you have paid, I am processing your payment request, oh yes, it is clear, the payment has come through. And then now that process doesn't change, whether you are in Asansol or whether you are in Ahmedabad or whether in Bombay, right? Similarly, a request of a public grievance, right? It essentially has to have what is a type of complaint, and again you can have general categories. I mean, broadly what are the 10 most frequent complaints, but you can add that also. That's not an issue. And then once you raise a complaint, a ticket has to be issued. That complaint has to flow to somebody. The citizen needs to know about where it is flown, how much time it will take. And that person does something, it again updates it. Again, that is a process which is you can apply to any situation. Yeah. There's a new application of this complaint. Similarly, you apply for something, you need some documents to apply for something, you need some information. It has to go through a workflow. So those things you can configure, whether it goes through a 2-step workflow or 3-step workflow. Okay. But if you have this as a building block, you can configure. Actually, in Asansol, street light is not a big issue, right? They call it something else. They call it batti nahi aa rahi hai, whatever they call it. Yeah. You can change the label. You can contextualize it so that people understand it. But the building block is still the same. The common infra is still the same. It's a bit like Android. We give example, right? Yeah. Before Android was there as a platform, application development platform. Everybody used to make their own applications, which will call your video, your recording, this happens. All that is available as a building block from Android. Now you can put your business logic on top of it. That I want to build a calendar application which looks like this. So idea here is that only that you absorb a lot of the complexity which are common across all the services. Yeah. We have about 24 or 25 building blocks of this. Things like authorization. I need to authorize you as a user. Now, that is common, doesn't matter. I need to set up as an employee. That is a common set. So you have common services. On top of this, there are some reference applications we have built to show how these building blocks come together to as common services. And then we have trained almost 20 to 30 partners who know how to build or deploy this. Okay. So that is how it works. But I think your point is, if one particular city says, I want my public grievance to look red and blue and green, and it should be called Shikayat Darj. That is absolutely possible.
Okay.
We call it a multi-tenanted architecture. Which is saying same building में अलग-अलग घर में अलग-अलग मल्टी टेनेंट्स रह सकते हैं, अपने घर की दीवार का रंग जो करना है वो कर सकते हैं, राइट? पर वो ईट गारा सब ठीक हिसाब से लगाया है, all the specifications there, right? So that's why but it is possible.
Okay, no, that's pretty. Then I think important as well, as because customization I think is key, especially when we look at it from the cultural aspects of each city. Otherwise, they are not going to use it, and the adoption might happen quite a lot.
And it's multilingual. Like for example, we have it has been done in 12 languages now. All the Chavnis in India have this now. Chavnis, and they're across India, so it is available in 12 languages. They have done the configuration customization themselves.
That's pretty good, because I think that is one of the biggest things that India can do, to make sure that there is inclusivity at all various aspects as well. But you raised a point which I found very interesting, is that as we are talking about requests for grievances or any other services, there are line departments which are involved, from where the things will come and where they will go. Now, how easy or difficult is that to develop in each city? Because I think that is one of the key mediums through which, while digitization is a block that you can put, as you said, but how does mapping of the whole services happen in each city, and how does that function?
So I think the mapping is a one-time exercise which says, so basically, if you look at complaint, you say there are 15 main complaints that contribute 95% of the. Then you say this complaint, every complaint will have a routing logic. It is a complaint on sanitation, so it basically looks at geography and the type of complaint. Okay. And it says, okay, I got a complaint from Lodi Road for sanitation. This needs to go to assistant manager, assistant engineer in this ward. It goes to that person. So that person says, okay, who's the sanitation worker in that area? He'll assign it to that. So there's a chain of custody which is there, that it is assigned, this person has to solve it. And that person says, the assistant engineer says, the sanitation worker, Ram Kumar, has to go and clean this up. He'll assign it to that person. And once it is satisfied, it is closed, he'll say it is done, and the information flows back to the citizen. So it's a combination of, when cities typically work on geography and departments in some sense, right? That's the service. So that's how it is kind of designed.
Okay.
Did I answer the question, or?
Yeah, you did. But that also raises one more question, I guess. Absolutely. Now, line departments are more involved. Like Ram Kumar has come into picture now, who would like to now somewhere does not understand mobile phones quite a lot. How will they be able to get on board to make sure that they are also comfortable with it, while citizens are adopted to such things and would like to? But what about the department people? How are they being made more aware of things? Made the process more linear for them?
Yeah. So again, it is not necessarily both for citizen and for the employee and the people who work on the ground to have mobile phones. They can do it on the phone. There are phone lines they can do it on. They say you can. In fact, in Punjab, 70% of complaints come through an IVR channel, not through the mobile app. Yeah. In fact, our belief is mobile apps are highly overrated as a citizen service delivery tool. Okay? Because I'm sure the big cities like Bangalore and this thing, because people have time in smaller cities. I was in Longowal last week. Anandpur side last week, and I went to the municipality there. And there's this, mother-in-law, daughter-in-law, and they, kid, like 9-month-old daughter, they had come to pay their property tax. So, and not they, and I went to them and said, why don't you, this WhatsApp pay hai, wo poster bhi laga, you can do it on WhatsApp and everything.
Yeah.
I said, nahin. With this excuse, we also came out of the house, sabji bhi khareedni, and all those things. So I think we should not, I always feel we should not try to impose our sensibilities on what is right for you. We should give people an option. You can do it on WhatsApp, you can do it on the mobile app, you can do it on the mobile phone, you can do it and the experience is same. Whether you go to the office or you call, you'll get the same SMS, you'll get the same workflow activated. And that is how we should look at it. To meet people where they are, not bring them to where you think they should be.
Yeah.
Because we are nobody will decide where they should be. They will decide themselves. So coming back, even now in a state like Andhra Pradesh also, which is a very advanced state, you see 50% of transactions still people go to the counter and do it.
Okay.
Right. But can you make that faster, even the counter experience? Right. If they were doing, 3 transactions in 5 minutes, can you make that 10 transactions in 5 minutes on the counter?
Mm-hmm.
So I feel one of the biggest success of digitalization is actually taking the drudgery out of employees' lives and making them enter the 21st century as workers. Rather than, मेरे को पिछले साल की receipt चाहिए. They'll go back, go through the files and bring the receipt versus just search there with the mobile number and say, अच्छा आपकी receipt ये.
Yeah.
So I think, so I believe, to answer your question, it should be left to we should not be prescriptive of that he has to use the mobile. If he wants to call and update, that's also fine. And a lot of people do that. Most municipalities, actually one person who operates the computer. Smaller municipality, right?
Yeah.
Everybody comes and says, "Mera ye aaj ka transaction aapko dalna." It is okay. I don't think there's a problem with that. As long as they're entering all the transactions.
Yeah. Yeah, and that is where somewhere I feel capacity is something that at least that one person should also be aware of all the different things possible, and that kind of puts the onus on that one person that okay, how can that be streamlined to the maximum extent? Because I think one of the important problems that we are trying to solve is move from paper to paperless, which makes it easier, but it's still a lot of process then that gets involved in the whole way.
I think what we've seen, Puneet, is from a capacity point of view, simplification is very important to make it so simple. I mean, everybody uses WhatsApp.
Yeah.
Everybody uses Paytm. The challenge is to make it very simple. Ask for as minimum information as you need. Make the screens very simple. Trying to follow design patterns that they're used to. Don't ask them to jump through hoops. First have password, then enter the password, then some will come, enter where's the water pump and stuff like that. It's a simple OTP based login every time. People are used to that, right?
Yeah.
And the screens are very, very simple and not more than 4 screens in one flow. So, what we find is we simplify it, people use it because people are getting used to, but it's their choice. They can still say, I still want to come to the office. That's great.
And you just mentioned coming to the 4-screen part. Has there been some kind of A/B testing done on these lines to figure out how?
We have. So we used to have we have tried various options of UX and UI.
Okay.
And initially we used the material design framework from Google.
Okay.
And then we learned about this. Government of UK had done they've done all their services in a very, very simple. There's a big success story.
Yeah.
So we actually got a designer to look at, and then we tested both the approaches on ease of understanding, ease of navigation, and we definitely found basically the Government of UK approach is one screen has just one information. There's no scrolling. You just click on that, you move name, just click name, right? It's very simple, right?
Yeah.
And every screen has a help icon. You can ask for help wherever you want. It's not that you have to scroll up and do multiple things. So I think that's the new UX we just launched for a rural program in Punjab. And I was very happy to have this 65-year-old pump operator Sukhdev Singh.
Yeah.
And he's collecting he's doing all the bill collection for 70 houses in his village called Mindwa. And he was super happy I can use it. So,
nice. Yeah, that's absolutely great because I think this is what the comfort you guys are also trying to create someday. So coming to the point where we kind of take a turn and try to understand now, what are the different kind of challenges that you face in this whole ecosystem? What are some things which have been solved, which are still to be solved. What are some of those challenges?
Yeah, I think the three categories of challenges. I think first is I find most of the challenges are actually programmatic. They're not technology challenges. So I think the design of the programs in terms of how do you think about change management, how do you think about standardizing without centralizing, right? So, how do you think about what is sufficient data for it, because tendency is to ask for everything.
Yeah.
We need your birth certificate, we need your this, we need your this. How do you simplify some of these things? So I find a lot of the challenges are actually in design. If you just digitize the existing process as is, chances are it will not succeed because the pain points will just move from physical to digital, right? Right.
Yeah.
So that is definitely one in my mind. Second is, I think we need to understand any change management needs to have strong positive motivation. I just feel sometimes we use digitization as almost like a tool to as a control tool. I mean, that's how it is perceived by a frontline employee. Here is another application that you should watch me in terms of what I'm doing.
Yeah.
So I feel the narrative around that it takes drudgery out of your work, narrative around how does it help you to do your job better. And believe you me, we do a net promoter score survey every year in the states we are in. And it's done by 60 decibels, it's an international agency. And actually the employee net promoter scores are higher. Like almost like 45 plus, 40 plus employee net promoter score.
Yeah.
Because when they start using it, they realize how easy their work is. So I think the change management with the positive kind of a motivation of employees is another kind of challenge that we found. Right? Third challenge is really around the interdepartment coordination in the government, right? If you need data from multiple sources, that creates its own problems. And fourth is obviously capacity is a challenge in whatever you do, whether it's the capacity of the government to procure the right partner, capacity of the government to appoint the right nodal officers, because ultimately, unless you have on-ground usage of digital tools, it's not going to lead to the result. I think that's the fourth challenge.
Yeah, no, that's quite inclusive, and I do think that designing is something that can cater to some of these things for sure. But eventually, that is something that even in general, India needs in a much better way to move forward. It's a very inherent thing that we don't realize and squat it off. But I think that's.
You only have to see how high the bars on the bus to hold are in India.
Yeah.
Some public buses, the bars are so high that who's 6 foot to wear, right?
Yeah, it's built for me, but no one else.
Or even they started building ramps now.
Yeah.
And it's impossible to get a wheelchair up those ramps. I was with a friend on the wheelchair. I said, how do I get you on this ramp?
Yeah.
Degrees.
No, I agree. That's the thing. Like while you're designing and you're making sure that there is access to things, but is it designed well enough? Is another question that always crops up. That is something that we really do need to take care and bring in more design schools somewhere. I think. So coming to the city level of conversations now, if you're going to a city and trying to pitch for this services, what all things do cities need to keep in mind while they are helping you out? What are the things that they can do or you can help them do so that they have a smoother transition towards this?
I think most important thing in my mind is cities need to have almost like a dedicated SWAT team which looks at this. Wherever we've seen success, we've seen this kind of a structure where there's one person looking all the revenue, one person looking at all so some kind of a, creating committees or subcommittees saying this committee will look after property tax, this committee will look after citizen engagement. So you actually have some mobilization of energy and resources to manage the change when it lands there, and also guide design and custom what needs to be customized. Because a lot of time what happens is different people have different information. So I think creating of those what we call committees or subgroups is a very important thing. And that is something only cities can do. Nobody else can do it for them. They will, and that, what you were saying earlier, no? I mean, they will know what design will work, what will not work.
Yeah.
Whether 7 categories of complaints will work or 10 will work, they will know. So that is one. Second is, other thing they need to kind of be very, very mindful of is that just having services digitized is not good enough. The communication of that, the adoption, driving adoption, the citizens. Now, again, some of the best cities we have seen is when people come on the counter also, they say, okay, hang on, you come today. But, by the way, you can do it on the phone also. Come here, I'll show you how to do it on the phone.
Yeah.
Right? So that kind of a orientation on adoption is extremely important. Again, this is something only a executive officer sitting in a municipality can do. You can send as many people from your vendor or we can go, but people listen to, unless he or she does it, he's not going to move.
Okay. So somehow it makes it more top heavy in the cities as well to be able to drive these things in.
It is. This is the reality.
Which is because somewhere we're trying to bring decentralization over here, I feel, and then still it is top heavy, which is very big conundrum in itself.
Yeah. Although I think when you form those committees, we see that they can log their revenue officers and everybody in those committees.
Yeah.
So, but I think from a creating a mandate perspective, that is initial push is needed from the top. I think there's no two ways about it.
And so then coming to the parts where you did mention before that interdepartmental conversations are already too scarce, and especially something like electricity and ULB are not going to talk electricity department and ULBs. In this case scenario, like how can that be bridged between at the city level? How can those silos be broken with this kind of digitization?
Yeah, I think so. There are institutional silos in which digitization cannot do anything. So I think those need to be broken at an institutional level. But definitely from a point of view of the benefits, for example, we've done some work in Punjab 3-4 years ago, not Punjab or Andhra Pradesh, where we looked at type of electricity connection and type of residence.
Yeah.
Okay? And we found huge revenue leakage that there were, commercial properties which have a domestic electricity connection and vice versa. So there is definitely benefit, and that's the kind of benefit we can show. Yeah. If you digitize it, you have one view of the property. You can see what are the different amenities being used by the property.
Yeah.
But to really, I guess, to break those silos, it has to be a institutional mechanism, and I'm not sure I'm the expert on that.
No, I do agree. It's a complicated thing for sure, and there is no two ways about it. But somewhere, I think there is a requirement of. So I think one of the biggest examples that always comes up is on the lines of that you collect all taxes on just one number, or maybe your Aadhaar card or PAN card, and so those things are connected, and that interconnection can help you bring out a lot of leakages. But how is that possible in Indian terms because of the interdepartmental side? How can that be achieved is something I think would be a larger question.
Well, I think once, if the institutional policy change happens, I'll give you another example. In Andhra Pradesh, the property revenue department and the water utility, they decided that we'll do a consolidated bill. It's like a Airtel bill which has your landline, your cable and everything. They used to issue 8 bills a year on water and sewerage and 2 bills on property. We did so because they did that kind of a reform from a policy point of view, we could issue a consolidated bill, one bill for a property that this is your empty land tax, this is your commercial property tax, this is your water tax, this is your sewage tax. You pay together, you get 10% discount. You pay it separately, and that was a huge success. Because what used to happen was, if property tax is 5,000 rupees, water bill is only 300 rupees, people will not pay, and they'll keep, that's a perennial problem. But because it was clubbed into something, suddenly their water tax collection went up humongously.
Oh, wow.
And obviously, we saved paper and all those good things what citizens have. So, I think technology can be enabler to do reforms at scale.
True. Yeah, that's quite interesting. And so I'll come to the question where we try to, again, like, this is a vast field. This is something which is not consolidated to like one or two departments that we are talking about, fields as well. So I will not just say the hard skills, but even on lines of soft skills. What are the important things or skills required to be able to work in this field of digitizing municipal services?
Okay, I think the first skill is a lot of humility. You need to go with a lot of people who work in technology. They live in a at times. One of the soft skills you need is a humility. Second is you need to be very, very. You need some principles to guide you by. Okay, you just don't have to build a most sexy solution, but you have to build something which works for people and meets them. So I think this whole notion of equity, access, it needs to be built in. That don't do something which is funky, but only 5% of people. I think you need to start with your lowest common denominator and say, okay, how do I build for that person? Right? You keep saying build for $500 million. So that's a you need to come with, right? Don't think about how funky my product is. Okay? You should be tested by how accessible and how easy it is. And third is, I think you need to be also, I feel, you need to define problems very sharply, because a lot of times I find so it's not problem solving skills per se, it is really your ability to do bit of ethnography, bit of design, and bit of, hard-nosed curiosity. Why do you want to do this? Why do you need five different proofs of ID? Just because then you need to. So I think this whole thing about listening to people first and then getting into rematch, because government has worked in certain, and everybody is not just government. If you set in your ways, you see what is it? Why do you? So but first you have to listen very hard, understand, and then be hard-nosed about it and say there's another way of doing it. So this whole idea of exciting people about new ideas, helping them think through what else is possible, is an important thing. Don't just say we're here to tell your stuff. That's not exciting in mind.
True. No, those are quite interesting points. And if you can also give a brief about what are the different hard skills that are required in this field.
So, I mean, obviously, you need to be you need to understand urban as a domain at a broad level, right? What does municipality do? What are the various ways of calculating property tax? What are the various all those things you need to understand pretty well. I mean, I'm not saying you need to be kind of need to know by heart, but you should know what the various kind of constituent parts of these service delivery is. Right? So that's one. Second is you should understand technology to the extent that how does it enable, accessible, equitable, transparent services, right? That's it. I think you should understand what does an open API mean. Not from point of view of code. I've never coded in my life. Okay. But you should be able to understand what role it plays and how it works. Okay. Then some of the latest thinking about what I say, understanding how public goods work. I think the new thinking is around all public goods, right? That Google Map is not a public good. It is actually a walled garden. Right? You can only do something. The way, for example, definitely we have built Digit is actually a public good. It's accessible to all. So understanding that thinking, developmental thinking on why this is important for this sector to have this approach, I think is a very important thing in my mind. And then you need to know things like all the program management, project management. Those are
Yeah.
and stakeholder management. That's a kind of a soft and a hard skill.
No, I think stakeholder management is generally one of the biggest ones in any governmental services that you are dealing with.
Anyway, in life also.
True. This was pretty great. If you think I've missed out on any points that you would like to cover, or give any anecdotes that you feel audience should know about, I think we can wrap it up on that.
No, as I said, again, I think the only anecdote I want to give is I met this girl called Antalakshmi. Name changed because of, it was my best day at eGov, like 5 years ago. It's a hot afternoon in Andhra Pradesh. It's a small town, Yelaru. Like she works as a social worker in a slum kind of area, and she's standing next to the open drain. And I said, "Have you heard of this application called Pura Seva, which is the name of the app?" And she, oh yeah, I use it. And she pulled her phone out and say, "Actually, 3 days ago, this drain was blocked, it was overflowing, and I complained on this, and I put that last year there was a dengue because of this, and 2 people died in the locality. So within 10 minutes, the commissioner called me, and the details from me, and said this will be fixed. And he called me again 8 hours later saying this is fixed or not, because she raised the complaint in the app. And it was done in 8 hours. And I said, oh, okay. Those are the kind of things which actually, make you hopeful about, how it has, that person who's working as social work in a slum has a voice to see how a commissioner is kind of orchestrating his or her resources. And the commissioner has a way of seeing what is happening in his city. Sure. So that's how, once that trust that builds between the administrators and the community, that's very powerful. And what we saw, interestingly, Puneet, in Andhra Pradesh is when this public grievances system went in 2015, there's 15 to 20,000 complaints a year in the state. But the system was so transparent and so easy to use for everybody. In a 2 years' time, the complaints went to 110,000. Not because there were more complaints, but because people had more trust that something will be done. So it's like a way of engagement. Actually, people participate. So that's very interesting how it can change the nature of the interactions and how people interact with each other. So that's very, very powerful in that.
No, I think this can be a new way of a participatory approach with the local bodies as well, which we have not yet explored. Thank you so much. This was absolutely amazing talking to you and learn many more things about what municipal services can be done, how can they be done. Super. Thank you so much.
Thank you for tuning into the podcast. Do subscribe to the podcast on your favorite platform and follow us on all social media channels. For more details about the Climate Center for Cities and registration on Climate Practitioners India Network, click on the link in the show notes. The episode is conceptualized and produced by Punit Gandhi. A big thank you to the whole team at C-Cube and NIUA for supporting the development of the podcast. Stay tuned for the next episode.